everybody, and welcome back. I am the Pompkin King, and in today's episode, we are going to be taking a tour of our first completed node here in your imagination. That's right, we have finished our first themed land. The horror node is, as far as I'm concerned, complete at this time, which means that we are going to be moving forward. But before we do, let me just take a moment and say where the future of the channel is going to be going. We are going to be continuing to do Pure Imagination videos every week, but I'm also going to be releasing small kind of teaser videos in between the main episodes, which will show you some of the stuff that I'm working on as we move into our next node, which by popular demand will be our Steampunk node. So without any further ado, let's go ahead and take our tour of pure horror. Exiting out of the main gate, we're entering into the park. The transport line passes right over the top here, which ought to be really nice once we get the trains running. Here is our first staff building. It's still in the mountain node, technically, so I've themed it to look like an abandoned mine shaft. And I'm going to be getting a little bit more creative with some of the ways that I incorporate staff buildings into the parks. Here on the border of the mountain node, we have the Mystery Shack and the Just a Memento Curiosities stand. And then proceeding down the walkway here, down the alley of trees, we do have the falling leaf effects that are coming down from above. And down this way, if we bang a left, this is how we get into the wolf node. The wolf stand area, which is over in Planet Zoo. Heading back on up the walkway here, you can see how we've themed the area so it blends the alpine area that we're building the world in with the horror node sort of autumn town kind of feel. And immediately to our left, this is the Sanderson house. This has got our information stand inside there, and it is screen accurate to the one used in the '93 movie. And here on the side, you can even see the water wheel where Thackeray climbed up and into the window of the witch's house. Moving over to the next house down, this is the Amityville Horror House. It is based on one of the most haunted houses in America. It does contain a bathroom. It also has a first aid station, rather ironically considering that 13 people were murdered in this house, and an ATM machine, because why not? It makes you want to stick around forever, and ever, and ever, and ever. Right next door, we have the Marston House. This is the screen-accurate version of the Marston House from the Castle Rock TV show. This one is built in a Romanesque revival style, and inside here we actually have the Marston Steakhouse restaurant, which is able to seat 9 individual blocks, however many guests that serves. Moving on down the road. Over here on our left, we have our Addams Family house. This is screen accurate to The Addams Family Matters. And it doesn't actually serve any actual purpose, but this was the first build I ever made in Planet Coaster. So I'm pretty happy with how that turned out overall. Over here, this is the train station for the horror node. It isn't active right now because I haven't connected any of the other train stations in the other lands. It's funny because you may recall that the track was the very first thing we laid out in the park, but the train is probably going to be the last thing that's completed. But if we take a look at the train station here, this is actually based on 19th century train stations built in the new imperial style. And we can follow the train tracks along this way. I've hidden red lights underneath the train tracks so as to simulate the underlighting needed for a spooky ghost train kind of situation. If you've ever seen Hey Arnold, that's kind of what I'm basing the train on, the Halloween episode of the Ghost Train. Over here on our right, this is a staff building that is based off of the design of a chapel at Brown University in Rhode Island, which was one of the original inspirations for the Miskatonic University in Lovecraft. Over here on the left, we've got the Witch's Den ride, which if we hop on, hopefully we can ride it. Yep. This one's already in progress. This is, of course, a prefabricated ride. We are going to be getting into designing some track rides as we move into the Steampunk node. I'm slowly learning how to add tracks and do the rest of that for the game. But it's a pretty decent pre-made, and it seems pretty popular with the guests.
Hello, Steve.
Hello, Steve, indeed. All right. Let's grab that. That's the Witch's Haunt. Directly across the street, we get a good look at that staff building I was talking about. Heading over this way, this is actually the walkway that will connect over to the circus node. And we will be beginning that as soon as we're done with the Steampunk node. Fitting in with the theming here, we have our Captain Spaulding's Fried Chicken and Gasoline food truck, which is closed at the moment. But we will be having this as a kind of connecting point between the horror and the circus nodes. Directly in front of us, we have the Haunted Mansion build that I did. This is based on the Haunted Mansion in Disneyland. It is accurate to the actual building. We'll take a closer look at that in a moment. Following along the line here, we're just going to skip ahead. This is actually the Jailer's Den ride, which takes us up and through this sort of haunted house. This again is a pre-made flat ride, but we are going to be making our own, like I said. Here you get a better look at the Haunted Mansion, and if we hop right across the street here, you can see we've got ourselves a Looney Balloon shop. Which, although they serve balloons of all different colors, I just imagine the red balloons that they have in it. There's another bathroom here, and we also have a soda stand as well. On our left, this is the entrance to our Roman catacombs. It is built in a Latin villa style. Going inside, we have several food and beverage service in here. And then if we head down the area to the catacombs, you can see this is where we have our ossuary, we've got the bones, and this is where it would connect with the Planet Zoo crypt that we showed in episode 4. Heading back on up and out. Over here on our right, we're going to be entering into our Antebellum Cemetery. We have a number of buildings and crypts set up here. And we also have zombies, because the game provides us with zombies, so why not use the zombies? We've got a lot of really excellently modded statues and builds inside here, and I will have a link in the description to all of the different workshop pieces that I used for this build. There's our zombies. On the other side, we can go ahead and do kind of a walkthrough of the cemetery itself. Again, Victorian cemeteries love to have their statuary, so there was a lot of it here. I downloaded probably about 20 pieces of statuary, and I used all of them. Over here on our left, this is the Beetlejuice house, where you can get Beetlejuice drink. This is, you know, based on the screen-accurate house from the movie, specifically the model that they use in the movie itself, the model of the house. That's Bruno. We don't talk about him yet. And over here on our left, this is the screen accurate Mrs. Lovett's meat pies from the movie of Sweeney Todd, which also has a chief beef inside. And there's a lovely little picnic area right here, but the guests don't use it for some unknown reason. I did actually go back and redecorate the outside of the Phantom of the Opera dark ride. Here you can see I have the side of it. We'll be taking a better, closer look at that in just a moment. And over on our right, we've got the entrance to the Miskatonic University. This again was where we would be housing the Armed Forces Medical Museum, which houses a whole bunch of pickled fetuses, mutants, nuclear disaster survivors, taxidermied people. It's just very weird, nasty, gross. And over here on our left, these are an example of some of the Victorian row houses that we are going to be building for the Steampunk node. Now, this particular building is actually a screen-accurate number 12 Grimold Place from Harry Potter and the Order of the Phoenix. But it's actually really hard to tell that just looking at it, because number 12 Grimold Place looks, well, exactly like every other house in that area in that part of London. And we will be talking about the different types of row houses that you can expect, and we will be building some of them when we get into the Steampunk node. I took a liberty in between sessions to go through and kind of lay out what I want to have happen here in the Steampunk node. You get an idea of that. And if we look over to the Phantom of the Opera dark ride, you can see I've added a dome to the roof, the proper dome for the opera house. I also have these golden angel statues, and I added siding decorations to this absolutely beautiful Baroque building. Phantom is by far our most popular attraction. The line brings you through the lobby of the opera house, which is much more atmospheric at night when you get the full effect of the candles. And then if you come down the ramp here into the cellar, we still have our little shrine to Daddy Daae that Christine prays at in the movie. And heading over to the loading area, we can go ahead and hop right on the boat, which is right here. Let's get in the proper seat. It's Christine's dressing room, decorated to look like a Victorian room. And then we go down into the passage of the hand torches, which leads us down into the Phantom's lair. Coming back up out of the exit, people are clipping through the floor, but that's heading back on up now. We'll take a look at the outside of the building, and then I'm going to discuss my plans for the Steampunk node. So here we see the facade. We've seen this before. but we can also get a good look at the exterior of the building here. And like this. I still haven't done anything with the back yet, and there is a reason for that, and that is because the back is going to be covered by other things, and if you don't see it, there's no reason to build it. And so that is the finished Opera House and the Horror Node. Now, let's talk about some plans for the Steampunk node. If we zoom out and come on up, you can see I've laid out some areas for the Steampunk node for buildings and stuff that I want to put in. And you can also see that I've dug a big pit here. I'm going to be experimenting with some new systems for the staff buildings. Primarily, I'm going to have all of the staff buildings in sort of a utilidors, where I'll have them in this sunken pit below the ground level, and then all of the workers will be able to come into the staff buildings, but the guests won't need to go down there, and I won't need to dedicate surface space to having those be a thing. The gray lines here are indications of streets. These are where I'm going to be having the actual roads for the Steampunk node. There are two of note that I should mention. This, of course, is the connection which goes over to the next node, which is science fiction off over in the next bronchial. But this one here is going to lead to a very important, very massive project that's going to be not necessarily part of the Steampunk mode, but also adjacent to it, which is going to be my recreation of the Crystal Palace and the Grand Exhibition of 1851. There's going to be a lot more on this later, but the short version is that the Grand Exhibition was the biggest Victorian spectacle pretty much anywhere in the world. It was one of the first world fairs, and it was an absolutely amazing spectacle and invention. So we will be having a separate map for the Crystal Palace exhibition, with such things to look forward to as world pavilions with themed areas from each of the countries represented in the world, as well as live animal exhibits, including but not limited to tigers, peacocks, elephants, and iguanodons. So I'm very excited for that going forward. But that is where we're going to wrap up for today. If you enjoyed today's episode, go ahead and hit that like button. And for future content into Pure Imagination, feel free to subscribe. You can also support us on Patreon. Link is in the description. But until next time, I am the Pompkin King, and I will see you later.